Okay, what you see here is the next iteration of the iPhone prototype. And what I've been working on recently is a method that will allow me to sort of systematically approach the various components of the application and the various building of the interface components. So what I'm using here is the editing window in Max MSP, and you can see a series of connections here and a series of connections here. This series of connections here relates to the first panel, which is the tempo panel, and then this connection here relates to the sample panel. Now, the design for these panels, which will be using the Mirror Web application to allow me to mirror these panels onto the iPhone, comes from some hand-drawn sketches like this. For example, here you'll see I have three panels: a metronome panel, samples panel that's playable, and a gestures recording panel to record gestures and positions in the space. So that's my starting point, and from that I have then moved into this area. Now what I'm using the presentation mode in Max MSP, so I'll show you what that does. If I engage the presentation mode, all of the code and all of the connections that I have here disappear, except for those that I've pre-organized into my panels at the top, like so. So this is what the user will actually see. And you can see there's a few little bits and pieces hanging over there that will need to be fixed, a few missing boxes, and etc, etc. So I have a list of to-dos here, which I will start adding to. And what I'm doing at the moment is getting the system to work, and also to work in terms of the interface. So I'm checking constantly back to the iPhone to see how these panels translate in real terms onto the iPhone. So to make the process a bit more organized, what I've done here is I've got a basic audio output configuration. Any of the graphical stuff that I'm using throughout the both the prototyping and the commenting components of this design, I'm putting over here so that I'm using it, and I've got a little simple interface here to engage the Mirror Web connection, which is basically a web URL back to this machine on the same network. So over here I have the metronome, working on the metronome configuration, and basically what we have at the moment is the ability to, if I go into out of edit mode here but not go into presentation mode, if I tap on this panel, it's recording how quickly I'm tapping. That tapping is coming down here and is being represented here in milliseconds. So roughly beating away here at about 110 beats per minute. So I'll need to, one of my to-dos will be to make that into a metronome figure in beats per minute, which is a slightly more recognizable way of setting tempo rather than in a series of decimal numbers. That sends the tempo to the transport, and the transport is a global transport, which will affect things like the speed of the playback of these samples over here and the speed of the playback of the samples here. So what I've basically got is a couple of folders full of samples. I've got a reference to those folders. Here I've got some drop-down menus with some different types of sounds that we could have for our metronome. So let's just have a quick listen to that. So I'll turn the metronome on, and you can see at the moment we've got the shaker. If I adjust the tempo here, re-engage, it changes. So I'll need to work on that interface component there so that it's a smooth transition between tempos. User can select different types of sounds according to what they choose to do. I've kept those sounds very short, very simple, with very short attacks and quick delays, so as not to influence the repetition of the sound in the metronome. Over here, in this section here, I have I've started to build the samples that the user can use to trigger in a loop style. So each sample can loop. You can see the loop configuration here. Each sample is following the global tempo. So if I speed this up or slow it down, it should, in essence, affect that. So let me choose a sound here. Let me start that sound. You see that's very fast. Very fast. I have a volume control here. So to slow that down, I have to invert this metronome. Watch what happens. I have to click very fast. So this sample is working off the global tempo transport, and it's looking for a low number here. If I start to slow that down, we come to the original tempo of the piece. I have it looping at the moment. And theoretically now I could start another sample and another sample and so on and so on. I need to make those connections, as yet they're not made. So that's what's happening in the programming side and the testing side of the apparatus. I'll just drop that volume a little bit there. And then over in the user interface component of the design, I'm choosing which items I want to hear. So that the user will have panels that they can switch between. Now you'll notice that metronome's not working on the same beat system. If I turn that loop off, that sample should come to a conclusion when it gets to the end of the sample. So dancers quite often would like just a simple metronome to work from, as a guide. And then from there they'll start to move in the space and they'll start to work on some ideas. So the system could be as simple as that, just providing a metronome, and then in the third panel, which is yet to be configured, would be a way of recording their movements around the space, tapping into and utilizing the positional data coming from the iPhone, the accelerometer, and other data that's there streaming out of the phone, being captured using OSC and converting those numbers to something that we can track and is visual. So that's where the prototyping is up to at the moment. 1.1, starting to look at the interface for the user, as well as the programming going on behind. At this point, we're not using any of the real-time data streaming from the iPhone. This is purely building some panel designs for the interface for the user to be able to interact with their iPhone whilst they're dancing and set up their recordings, and maybe working through the process of designing their choreography using these tools.